Today I'm going to show you how I create the semantic representation for two verses in 2 Kings. So I'll be working on 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. So first, this first sentence. We use titles where NIV has titles. We don't necessarily use the NIV text, but that's how we decide where to put the title breaks. So we're going to add a title here. Elijah taken up into heaven. New Century has Elijah is taken to heaven, and NASB Elijah taken to heaven. Now, notice that the NCV wrote it more like a real sentence, is taken, instead of taken up. So we follow that kind of usage. And then also note that it's a passive. So we have to express the agent. So I could write this as a passive. Elijah is taken to heaven by Yahweh. That's made clear here in the text. We use Yahweh for Lord in all caps in English, and the translator could decide however he wants to express that in his language. In English it could be Lord, but we're going to write it Yahweh in the semantic representations. So here, but since we know that definitely that it's Yahweh, I'm going to write this as an active sentence, and this is how I wrote it. I put this title notation, then I say Yahweh takes Elijah to heaven. Okay, and then that's how I write it for our phase one, and then I'm writing it in a more English-friendly version for the consultant here. So again, I have this title note. This is a verse notation, it's verse 1, and then there's title notation, Yahweh takes Elijah to heaven. Okay, then I'm going to have a paragraph marking. I'm going to start out some new text, and this is the way we do it after a title. So we put this paragraph marking, and right now it should be that the computer can interpret this just fine, but it doesn't. So anything after an underscore is not interpreted by the computer. So this is how we write it for the phase one right now. But we write it this way for the consultant, that there's a new paragraph after a title. Okay, so let's look at the next text. Okay, so it says in the where'd that come from? Okay, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. So here it says it was almost time for the Lord to take Elijah by a whirlwind up into heaven. Then it starts the story here. So this is kind of a preface. It's telling us that what happens next happens before this happened. And here it says, now it came about when the Lord was about. So again, this is another way of saying that it's about to happen. So I looked in the handbook. Looks like there are no translation notes for this section. But for this verse, it says, the Lord was about to take, and it talks about this, and it happened, like the NASB uses. It says that, RSV starts it with now. We have a word now in our system, but it means right now, like at this time. Whereas this now is a discourse marker saying, well, it doesn't really have much meaning. And it happened. I'm going to use the suggestion, and they suggest that I look up how to handle this discourse marker. I actually did that. So I went to the translator's handbook for 2 Kings, which I got out of the translation workplace. And so it says that English translations, we don't have a way of expressing this in our system. It says many modern versions omit it, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to express that, and so it happened. Okay, so I could say the Lord will soon take Elijah up into heaven, and then start out with this other sentence. But I decided that a more straightforward way to say that is to say, before Yahweh took Elijah to heaven in a whirlwind, he left Gilgal with Elisha. Okay, so with this before, it makes it totally obvious that what we're talking about now happens before this other event. So first, let's look at the English. If I write it for the consultant, I write it, before Yahweh took Elijah to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah left Gilgal with Elisha. I paused a moment to type this in. Although it says whirlwind, you see in the phase 1 I wrote storm/whirlwind. And that means that we have a simple word, storm, and if the more complex word whirlwind is available, that's used. And I show that to the consultant down here by writing complex concepts storm/whirlwind. You can see that whirlwind is complex. If you go to the ontology and you see right here whirlwind, it's magenta. If you put the mouse over it, it says it's complex. When I went to our how to represent complex concepts, it didn't actually have an entry for whirlwind, so I had to add it. So I write whirlwind is a complex word, and we're going to pair it with wind or storm, and it is going to be in the system. So here, the way I wrote that in the phase 1 is I put it in brackets. So before Yahweh took Elijah to heaven in a storm or whirlwind, he left Gilgal with Elisha. So that's how I did the first verse. Now let's go to the second verse. So switch to that one. Okay, it says, Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." Okay, so let's do that sentence first. In the NCV, it says, Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here." Same thing. The Lord has told me to go to Bethel. And then, and Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." Now note that the more literal versions, the NIV and the NASB, use the what we call the perfect here, has sent. The perfect is something that we don't automatically assume can be used in a target language, because not all languages use the perfect. We do allow the perfect if it can be represented with a past tense using an adverb like recently or previously. So you might say, and we only allow it if it can be used with either of those options. So here, the Lord previously sent me to Bethel. Or now, I don't think that well represents the meaning here, because the perfect can also have a present sense. And I think that's more appropriate here because he's in the process of being sent. He hasn't gone there yet. So I don't really want to use a past tense, and I don't want to use are perfect, which is actually a discourse called flashback, which we use if it's okay to write it with the simple past with previously or recently. So I'm going to write is sending me. So here's what I did. Oh, and this is a paragraph, so I should put paragraph marking down here and down here underscore paragraph. Okay, it's starting a new paragraph. So this is what I did. I'm going to write it in the English-friendly version first. I'll read it to you that way. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. Yahweh is sending me to Bethel." So I think this is better because he's in the process of being sent to Bethel. So how do we write this in the phase one? We have some specialized notation. Elijah said to Elisha, well, so far that's okay. Here's where we get into the specialized notation. When we start a quote, we start it with a bracket, left bracket, and then we put the quote symbol. So, you know, in English, we don't need the brackets. And then he says, instead of stay here, we have to put the subject. Oh, and I messed up. This is an imperative. So we have this special notation, an imperative marker, and we have to specify the subject. So the subject is you because Elijah is talking to Elisha, you, but then we have to say who you is. So we put in parentheses Elisha, and then this is an imperative marker, tells the computer that this is an imperative. Stay at this place. Now, actually, the computer would have correctly interpreted it if I had put here. But I'm going to write it out the way that the semantic representation is really occurs in the computer system. It's at this place. In English, it gets generated as here. Yahweh is sending me. So again, you know, this is a first-person marker, but we have to say who it is for the computer. It's Elijah to Bethel. And then we end with a period and a close quote. So that's how we did the phase one for that first verse. And then we're going to have a new paragraph for Elisha's response. So I put underscore paragraph. Anything after an underscore is ignored by the computer, but this is a notation for the person building the semantic representation. And for the consultant, we do it in parentheses paragraph. Okay, so let's switch and look again at the English translations. But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. Okay, so let's look in New Century. But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives and as you live, I won't leave you." So they went down to Bethel. And then the NASB says, now notice that the NASB doesn't make a paragraph marker, but we've decided to use the paragraph markings based on NIV. So we are putting a paragraph marker there. So it says, but Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. So the idea seems to be here that he's saying, you should know, it's just as certain that I will not leave you as it is that the Lord lives and as you yourself live. So he's communicating that he wants Elijah to know this, that he's not going to leave him. So I'm going to use a construction that I showed you for another video in Proverbs. Let's read it in English to see what I did here. Okay, so I have the paragraph marking, but Elisha said, "You should know." Okay, so I'm going to use that same "you should know" construction because he's communicating that he wants Elijah to know this. You should know that I will not leave you, just like you know that Yahweh lives and that you live. So we're pretty much capturing this literally, but with this "you should know" notation. And then I say, so they went, so Elijah and Elisha. We can't say they. No third person pronouns are allowed in our semantic representations. So Elijah and Elisha went to Bethel. And this probably would be generated in the target language with Elijah and Elisha, although it could be represented as a third person pronoun. But since we haven't used that combination of nouns in the verse, above it, it probably will be generated this way, but that's okay. And the people who are editing this could replace it with they. So let's see how I did this in the phase one that we read into the computer. So this version is for the computer and the person who's going to be inputting it into the computer, and this version is for the consultant. But Elisha said, comma, so again we start a quote with a left bracket. Open quote, you should know, this is not an imperative because he's saying you should know, it's not no, it's you should know, that I will not leave you. So note how I specify you as Elijah, I'm Elisha, and you as Elijah, just like you know that Yahweh lives and you live. Now, when we start a quote, we put a left bracket, and we should have a right bracket at the end of the quote. I messed up here, so I'm going to add that. In fact, there are two brackets I missed. So when the person is inputting this in the computer will tell them, oh, you forgot to add these brackets, and then they'll have to figure it out. But it's nicer if I figure it out for them. So you see you have a left bracket here at the beginning of the quote, a left bracket at what is known, which should be known. But that's closed. Then a left bracket at just like. So now we've got two left brackets, you should know, and just like you know. So this is enclosed, Yahweh lives and that you live. So we have to close off the just like clause, just like you know, and then we have to close off the left bracket that was at the beginning of the quote. So Elijah and Elisha went to Bethel. So that shows you how I did it for these two verses. I have the phase one that will go into the computer with some specialized notation that is not automatically analyzed, but the person inputting it in the computer will be able to use it. And then I have the verse as it will be shown to the consultant and is more readily readable.